Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for another session of Magnify Our Impact. And today I'm interviewing a great friend of mine in Tom Brzostowski. And Tom, I met a number of years ago at WWF, and Tom's had a fascinating career and made a big difference to us from a natural perspective, and is passionate about ecology and our environment and the natural species that we share our life with. Through all of my work, what's clear to me, at least over the last few years, is that we really need to start getting a proper handle on climate change. And, you know, this is obviously it must be really our biggest challenge in the world today, is how do we look after ourselves and our environment in unison? I'm going to ask Tom to explain what he's done in the past and what he's doing now. Tom, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Craig, for having me. Great talking to you. It's a pleasure.
And just give us a real indication of what your background is, what your expertise is, what you're passionate about, and where you're at now.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So it's great to talk to you. I'm, as you say, I'm Tom Brzostowski. I'm a zoologist by background. From a very, very young age, I have been inspired and passionate about nature. I had the great privilege of growing up. I'm from the UK originally. I grew up in Surrey, one of the most forested counties in the UK, and I was fortunate to have some kind of really beautiful woods and rivers and wilderness areas right on my doorstep. And it was from those kind of early childhood experiences that I became really fascinated with life. Living things in nature in all forms. I remember thinking really early on that I wanted to do something in my life to help protect and look after nature. I didn't know how or where. I just knew that I wanted to do something. So I studied zoology at university, and then I embarked. And the last 10 years of my career, I've been working for global conservation organizations. I'm currently with an organization, a global conservation organization called the Nature Conservancy. We work in 79 countries all around the world, helping to protect rivers, forests, oceans for both people and wildlife. I've been here for 4 years. I had the great privilege, as Craig said, of moving my wife and children out here to New Zealand a couple of years ago to help protect this place of global conservation significance. Despite being a relatively small country, as the 4th largest marine territory in the world, 2/3 of the species here are found nowhere else in the world, but also sadly some of the highest threatened species levels. Before the Nature Conservancy, I worked for the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, in the UK for 5 years, and before that a smaller conservation group called the Born Free Foundation. So I've been really, really lucky and privileged to be able to devote my time and energies to these great organizations and the great cause of helping to protect our natural world for future generations. So specifically in the last kind of 8 years, I've been working in the field of philanthropy. So engaging and working with inspiring individuals, foundations, companies, and increasingly impact investors who really share our mission, who really care about the natural world and are inspired to make transformational gifts to help protect it and help support conservation efforts. And I love that job because I get to meet some really fascinating, amazing, generous individuals who care about nature as much as I do. We have some great conversations and are achieving some great stuff in the world. Still a lot more work to go. As you said, Craig, climate change is one of the greatest challenges facing humanity at the moment. We've all got a long way to go, but there's some fantastic, inspiring people out there doing great work.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Tom. That's a great introduction because it's really clear of your passions and your orientation and where you're going with regards to your vision. I guess and you've kind of answered this, but I wanted to pinpoint this again, is that, and this is important, I think, for me, definitely, and for all of us, I guess, to understand, is when was it that you realized the importance of us protecting nature? And then please go on to talk to us just openly about those of us who haven't got, a degree, in the natural world in some way, or, we're not a zoologist or a botanist or a scientist or a marine biologist. Just us out here, what's important for us to think about with regards to protecting the planet, do you feel, in 2020? So my first question is, what really ignited, do you think, this passion in your work and your career? And secondly, what do you feel we can do as observers at the moment to the natural world, rather than working inside the industry to help?
Great questions, Craig. So, I guess in answer to your first question, where it really started for me, it's got to be the time that I was able to spend outdoors, riding bikes with friends in forests, fishing with my dad in local rivers and lakes, and just watching the birds and the animals and the grass snakes swimming around. Just being in that environment just really, really, really got me interested in just the natural world. I think David Attenborough put it kind of fantastically a couple of years ago when he did an interview with Barack Obama, that every child starts off fascinated with nature and living things and creepy crawlies. Yes. And some people, maybe lose some of that enthusiasm and love and intrigue. And I was lucky enough to kind of retain that. And so I've always just been passionate about wanting to learn more about life around me. And that led me then to understand that the challenges that our world is facing at the moment, and therefore devoting my life to seeing what I can do, what role I can play to help contribute. And as you say, Craig, the environmental challenges facing our planet are, in my view, some of the most significant facing humanity. At the moment, around 1 million animal and plant species are now threatened with extinction. It's a big number, 1 million animals and plants threatened with extinction. Global wildlife populations around the world have decreased by about 60% in the last 40 years. Global temperatures have risen sharply over the last centuries and continue to rise. Food demand is expected to increase by more than 50% in the next 30 years as the world's population continues to grow. And really simply, there cannot be healthy, happy, prosperous future for people on our planet with a destabilized climate, with depleted oceans and rivers, with empty forests, all stripped of the web of life that sustains us all. But the exciting thing is, and the positive thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. Science has shown us that we can have it all. We can have a planet by 2050 with 10 billion people, and all 10 billion people having enough food, enough water, enough energy, and satisfying lives. If, and it's a very big if humanity, if we all make some serious changes now to the way we live, the choices we make now in 2020, particularly in the next 10 years as well, will really define the legacy that we leave behind to future generations. Again, the good news is that we know what's going on with the planet. We know what we need to do to fix it. We just need to get on and do it. And I think it's really inspiring as well, these last few weeks, that the global response to the COVID-19 crisis has shown us that the public are willing to accept radical change if they consider it necessary. And for the COVID, there was that health necessity. But I think it's really it's been really sad around the world what's happening, but also in a way encouraging that people can respond to these global challenges. And so really, governments need to make it a priority. They need to reorder their priorities. Protecting the planet must become the first duty for all decision makers. But it's not just governments. Everyone has a role to play in doing their bit, in speaking up for nature, our planet, and future generations. We can all do our little bit, and it all adds up.
So, Tom, when you look at this, when we first heard about climate change, I guess it was about turning off the light at night. It was about, don't buy a 4-liter car. That was the message. And don't eat so much meat. And now there's a real shift, I think, economically, in how we look at our work, how we look at governments, how we look at how we're going to travel. All of these different things are coming into play. is if you can give us some advice and, you know, as to how you look at this with your family, or maybe go bigger and, you know, look at a more macro sense of, you know, how do we run our businesses? What are the 2 or 3 things that you think are most important in 2020 to really propel us? What do you think are the key points or the key moments that psychologically that can spring us into action? Because I think, as we've learned from coronavirus, and you've just said it, is when we think it's necessary, then we do something. So what do you think has to be necessary? What do you think we have to learn or understand in order to really make a shift? How can we understand more?
I think people need to really understand and recognize that climate change is having an impact now in the lives of people, animals, places that we care about around the world. It's not something that may happen in the future. People, you know, there's more people on the move, migrating at the moment in the world than there has been in human history, and a lot of that has been climate change related. Water scarcity, arable land use, you know, loss of coastlines, rise in sea levels, increase in the severity of storms, which are impacting, and natural hazards. I think people need to realize that it's happening now, today, and if we don't do something soon, then things can get worse, and it will just make it a lot harder for us all to have healthy, happy lives.
I know that neither of us are epidemiologists. I can never say that word correctly. But when we look at epidemics, it's obvious that, you know, it's become impacted through some part of our planet and how we've looked after ourselves. So disease comes naturally, as far as I'm understood, from us creating toxicity in some way, shape or form. And so presumably this is the coronavirus, but however it started, which we might not know exactly, everybody's got different opinions. You know, we're going to have more troubles. The universe doesn't let us off scot-free, does it? If we begin to damage it. And so, you know, this isn't directly an impact like, you know, like a flood or an enormous tidal wave across the planet, or an enormous earthquake or dust cloud that we had before. But there are big examples of this damaging human life and other species around the world that we can see right, you know, in front of our eyes right now. I think more than we ever have done. But you know, so with that, I'm really interested in how you are magnifying your impact, because there's many people listening to this that are running charities, leading charities, you know, people that are interested in philanthropic endeavor, who are looking for the right way to create an impact. So just give us an idea, with all the resources that that you at the Nature Conservancy have, or you personally have in New Zealand, how are you helping to magnify impact? What kind of projects are you working on that can really make a difference?
Yeah, so again, great question, Craig. The challenge with environmental challenges is that there's not just one. There's so many, and they're all interrelated, interconnected. And you put it, you know, well yourself. Humans and people are intrinsically linked with the health of our environment, and it's particularly the world's poorest people that are most dependent upon healthy natural environments. Whether they go to the forest to get wood to burn to cook their food, or get water from the river nearby. And when those environments degrade, become impacted, polluted, then it's often, you know, the poorest people in the world who suffer the most, unfortunately. And companies as well. Companies are dependent upon healthy natural ecosystems and resources as well.
Yes.
And so it's in their best interests to steward and manage those resources sustainably for future business. Firstly, you know, these are big challenges, and everyone and every organization, I guess, needs to understand where they can play the biggest how they can have the biggest impact, basically, and the biggest focus with their expertise, their resources. And then collectively, we can, hopefully move the needle on the environmental challenges facing the world at the moment. I'm reminded of a Chinese proverb that I like, of a single spear and a single horse. We need to focus our limited time, energy, resources on achieving, one thing at a time, or a small number of things in a big way. And you can kind of talk about that both in a personal way, but also an organizational way. So my organization, the Nature Conservancy, globally is working on kind of three main things: how we can kind of continue to protect land, ocean, and water. The organization has protected huge amounts of land and water over the past 70 years, about 120 million acres, an area the size of Spain. We know that we need to protect at the same amount of that area in the next kind of 5 years. We know we need to tackle climate change, and we know that nature can play a massive role in that. So just by restoring nature, restoring forests, wetlands, we know, and protecting those areas, we know that can be about 30% of the contribution to reducing emissions, global emissions. So, it's really important to invest in renewable energies and to encourage people to change their transports and all those other things. But actually, just by looking after nature and helping to restore it, you can have a big impact. And the third area is how we can kind of sustainably feed a growing global population. As I said, we know we need to double agricultural output by 2050. How can we grow double the amount of food that the world is producing now on the same amount of land, so we're not eating to more natural areas? And like you say, there is some science coming out at the moment that the impact that humans are having on habitats and on nature, may lead to more transferable disease and things in future. I don't know how proven those. I'm not a scientist in those areas, but there are more and more organisations talking about that. So here specifically in New Zealand, given it has the fourth largest marine territory in the world, we really work and see how we can help to protect the marine ecosystems here. New Zealand's taken the lead in the world, for instance, in wanting to put electronic monitoring devices across all of its entire fishing fleet, so it has greater data and understanding of what the fishing fleets are taking out of the water, so you can then more effectively manage those fisheries and the fish species and then all the other wildlife that depends on them. And if New Zealand can get it right, then the whole world can kind of watch and follow afterwards. And we're working very closely with Maori, with the indigenous people here of New Zealand. Around the world, indigenous people own and have stewardship over about 20% of the world's land and waters, a huge amount. And they also have a huge amount of knowledge and understanding about how to live in balance with the natural world. And those 20% is also home to about 80% of the world's biodiversity. So it really makes sense to work closely with indigenous peoples to help protect that for everyone. So those are a couple of things that we're specifically doing. But I really think the key thing there is the need to focus your efforts personally and organizationally. I really like Warren Buffett's 5-25 strategy. I don't know if you come across that, Craig. So he was famous for saying that you should kind of write down 25 things, 25 goals that you want to achieve in your life or your organization. Draw a circle around the top 5, and then focus on those 5 and say no to the other 20. And that's really stuck with me, because it's just a reminder of it's not just about what you do per se that drives productivity and performance. It's about what you say no to and what you don't do, really, which I think has a big impact. So I like to refer to that in both my personal life, career life, and when you think about an organization as well and what you want to achieve. So focus. That makes a lot of sense.
So talk to me about the people that have inspired you most. You mentioned some global players in the way of Warren Buffett and David Attenborough and Obama. And to be specific and focus, who's inspired you most in the work that they've done in climate change or environmental sustainability? But even more important than who it is, what is it that they've done that you think that we need to model and replicate?
Craig, at the moment, I'm feeling pretty proud and inspired by Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand here.
Yes.
In just kind of three short years, she's risen from being a kind of a relatively little known MP in a low polling opposition Labour Party to a global figure in Time Magazine's list of most 100 influential people in the world. And many have been proposing, in the last few weeks, that she could be one of the most effective leaders in the world right now. And throughout my career, I've always looked at successful people, tried to observe them, understand them, what is it about them. And I think for Prime Minister Ardern, it's her style of leadership. She's empathetic. It's her compassionate approach to politics, where kind of success is not measured only by a nation's GDP, but by the better lives that its people can live. I think she's just an excellent communicator with both an informal and informative style. She's led the country through this COVID-19 crisis along those lines, and with that style. Her government took really decisive action straight away in the early days of the pandemic, imposing a lockdown on the country. And then through that, she stayed in touch with the people. She sympathized with people. She could relate to them, what they were going through, saying that, I know it's really hard to stay at home, especially with children. I'm sorry that you can't take your kids to the local playground. She said why. It's because viruses, this virus, we think it can stay on surfaces for up to 72 hours. We know it's hard, and she's going through the same. She's really kind of relatable. So I just think she's just been incredibly influential, and she's just having such a tremendous and positive impact on the lives of so many people right now. And so there's many people that I've followed, aspired to, but I'm just feeling particularly inspired by Jacinda at the moment, and particularly the way she wants to lead with that compassion, empathy, understanding, informality. I think there's a lot that other world leaders can maybe learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. She's a real person with a great sense of humility, but also very intelligent and sharp and quick. So she's got IQ and lots of EQ, which isn't, I suppose, a real unusual gift, but one that's truly inspirational. I get that. I completely get that. And so, as you were saying that, my background in emotional needs psychology and, how fascinated by how people tick is to bring it back to self. What's important for us when we're running teams, she's running a whole country, but when we're running teams, it's about communication, empathy, understanding, speed of action, taking action when you need to, not be afraid to step in and do what needs to be done. I mean, she's, so I'm paraphrasing now, but that's inspirational. So to take that, Tom, and to your career, so to take her as an example, and look at it from what you've done as a global organization, what are the things that you've learned in work, not just in your environmental studies and the work that you do, but whether you're a carpenter or running a charity or a social enterprise or a community interest company or a commercial organization or a director of people? There's lots of different people listening to this interview. What are your lessons from being in a team? What do you think creates the right culture? What do you think creates the right winning culture? Because, you've worked with lots of teams, at Born Free, and then, like you say, at WWF, and now at the Nature Conservancy, and you've had to deal with lots of different cultural teams, indigenous people who've got a very deep culture. You've had to deal with people in large cities, in country environments, people from working from home. You've dealt with all sorts of different teams and people who think differently and people who are interested in, you've got different stakeholders. So you've got people on the ground working, you talk about the fishermen, and then you've got high net worth individuals. I mean, you're dealing with so many different types of people. if you can lock them all together and give me some advice and thoughts, what do you think creates a winning culture in a team, no matter where you come from?
It's exactly what you just said. I think diversity of peoples, diversity of thoughts, diversity in as many ways possible, drives results, drives performance, brings different perspectives, ideas to the table. Again, there's a great African proverb. I like proverbs. You're probably getting Craig, but if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I like that because it just really aligns with my values. Bringing different peoples together to around common shared goals and objectives, and we all have things. Everyone has the same thing. We all want the same things from life, and for our children and for our planet. There's more that brings people together than divides us, and it's building on those connections. So I think that firstly, that is a really, really important aspect of teams, organizations, collaborations. Another thing which I've always kind of like, I've come to realize more and more as my career has developed and as I've built teams and managed teams. One, hire people smarter than you. I really think that's a great thing to live by. And really, as a leader, as a manager, your role is to support your team, not the other way around. I work for my team doesn't work for me.
Okay.
And I think another key thing is that I've learned is making sure that people know that it's okay to fail and make mistakes. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of success. I think it's really important to get that across to your team, that it's okay for people to take risks. If they succeed, awesome. If they fail, then look, we'll all be all the wiser. Failure is just a key to success, and each mistake teaches us something. And we're all human. We all make mistakes, and that's okay.
Sure.
And
absolutely. No, that's powerful because I completely agree with you. And what I thought of when you were saying diversity is actually, that's really a big learning for climate change is, we live in what's in front of us, and to change, we need to understand and learn about diversity in so many different ways. So that's a massive learning. And don't be afraid, 100%, don't be afraid to fail. If you get afraid to fail, you can't achieve that much. That's become clear, right? Probably spoken to you 20 times and over my career and over the last number of years since you were at WWF when we first met. And I've met you a number of times, and you're not, but when I meet you or speak to you, you're always super calm. Your wife might tell me something different. Your kids might tell me something different. But you are always calm, and you're measured, and you think about things, and then you really get things clear in your head and you deliver them. And that as a leader, that makes so much sense, that it must be wonderful to work with you in that way, because you don't panic, you don't throw your toys out your pram, you're dealing with massive stuff and you're calm. I know that won't be true all the time inside you because you're human, but just how do you leverage your resources? Talk to me about, because you're quite an unusual character in this way, is you seem so level-headed. So talk to me in two things really I'm interested in here. One is, are you always that calm that you show us? Secondly is, how do you take your internal resources or your thoughts? What do you say to yourself? Because this is the magic for me when I interview you guys, is when things are really rubbish and that things are going super wrong for you. What is your psychology that you tell yourself when you're having a rubbish day? What do you say to yourself to say, okay, Tom, this is no good. I've got to change what I'm thinking about. What is it? A question? Is it just you go and breathe in 10 minutes in the woods? What is it that you chat to somebody? What do you do to stay this calm?
That's such a big question. But it's again a really, really insightful, really interesting one. It's making me do a lot of soul searching, Craig. I would say that I am a bit of a follower of the philosophy of Stoicism, a Greek school of philosophy that really is about making people understand our thoughts are sometimes more harmful and hurtful to us than actually what happens in the world to us. And being able to lead a happy life is more about a state of mind. And I'm always learning more and more about this, and ancient philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and Seneca and Epictetus. I'm finding their learnings and their teachings really, really fascinating. And a lot of that is about how you can live a kind of stable life and not be fazed by just understanding that the world is uncertain and things happen and it's unpredictable. But to focus your energies and actions on things that you can change and that you can have an impact on, not in a way that just makes you not care about the problems in the world or feel that you can't have any impact. But it just helps, going back to what I was saying before, it helps to focus my energies, my limited time and energies. No, I'm not always this calm, Craig. I have a busy family life with two wonderful young children at home who keep me keep me busy, and also that division of work and home life helps keep me grounded, and the family helps energize me for work. I don't know.
Well, that's a great answer. There's two things that come from that for me is some real leaders in history there. Is that psychologically something that you feel that you've always had an interest in, or is that something that has come to you? That's the first thing is, what are you reading a lot? Are you really developing yourself in that way consistently? And the second thing is, we all have habits, and we are very much creatures of conditioning. And so do you have a routine when you wake up in the morning? Do you breathe a certain way? Do you meditate? Do you exercise a certain way? Or do you take time on purpose before you answer a question to think? Are there some behaviors that you impart consciously that allow you to lead in this way and have this philosophy? There's some behaviors that we can model in you.
I do try to be disciplined. I try to confine myself to the present.
Okay.
As much as I can. And I mean that in the sense of when I'm at work, I try and focus on one thing at a time. It can be hard. It's taken a lot of years to learn how to cut out the distractions of emails, phone calls, upcoming meetings.
Yes.
But I've just realized that, deep working and focused working really makes an impact in the long run. And then when I'm at home, I try and be focused and present with my family. My family is the most important thing to me. It comes above all else. As I said, it helps keep me grounded, helps recharge me. I don't check my phone or my emails when I come home. It can be tempting, especially when you work for a global organization where emails are coming in at all times of the day.
Yes, of course.
I kind of owe it to my health, my physical health, my mental health, and my family to be present at that time. I often think about, I've still got many decades ahead of kind of work and career, and it's something you see all the time at the moment. People burning out, trying to do too much, stretching themselves, and we all need to work hard, and you need to work hard. I think you just need to be mindful that life, work, career, organizations, the challenges that I'm working on a day-to-day basis to try and solve, the environmental challenges, these are marathons. They're not
absolutely
sprints. And we need to manage that balance so that we can come in each day. And I I like to wake up early. I like to just have quiet time alone to kind of gather my thoughts without checking, again, emails and my phone, without checking electronic devices. I commute to work and I try and read when I'm on my way to work. And then when I'm in work and I'm in the office, I focus and I be present. And I think that I'm still learning all the time as well. And I'm learning more and reading more from what others and other successful people have done. And I've still got a long way to go. I'd like to be better at meditating. It's something that I need to work on. I have found that since having children, my attention span and my ability to concentrate has been impacted more, particularly the early years with the sleepless nights and things like that. And so I need to work on that more. And I need to do more exercise. I know I need to do more of that. But I'm being a bit kind to myself as well. I've got a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. Yeah, and I just think, at this time in my life, they give me a good enough run around. They do keep me fit and healthy.
Take a lot. There's a lot of energy there. Yeah, 100%. So you've talked about, which is really valuable. You've talked about some behaviors, some conditioning mechanisms, and values and purpose and vision from an environmental perspective. Talk to me about experiences that you've had, because I think experience is, the thing that shapes a human mind and heart more than anything else. When you, like you said, you talked about some of your early experiences when you, first went out into the woods when you were a kid. But I mean, what are the 2 or 3? Are there? Because let me just paraphrase this for a second by saying that for me, when I look back, there's major moments in my life that were probably built by other things that happened. But there has been 2 or 3 or 4 huge things that have happened in my life that have shaped who I am and what I do and where I go. And so what are the 2 or 3 biggest experiences that you feel that you've had that have shaped the way you look at the world and the way that you look at your work? Are there like moments, like mine is the Amazon and my mum passing away and different, having my family, and there's massive different moments, right, that we all have that shape us. What do you think are the biggest learning moments of your life so far?
First and foremost, and most importantly, is becoming a father myself.
Yes.
I would say it's just given me a whole different realization, outlook on life, on what's really important and what matters. And that has helped me as well in my life to prioritize working on trying to do fewer things better and working smarter and not necessarily kind of harder or longer hours. And it's particularly taught me to be more patient as well. And I'm learning every day as well. I feel at the moment my kids teach me more than we're teaching them, and it's very extremely valuable. So that's definitely the first most important experience. Secondly, I would, again, related to family, I'd say meeting my wife Sophia. She's my best friend. She's my trusted advisor. She's my career coach. She inspires me every day. She energizes me, reassures me when I need that, supports me. And she enables me to do what I do. And I really think I would not be the person I am today without her and her support and encouragement. And lastly, I guess another kind of key moment for me that I kind of look back on, it's probably an interview that I had with the Born Free Foundation when I finished my degree in zoology at university. It was in 2009. It was at the height of the last global economic recession. It was a tough time to be starting out in a career in the conservation sector. They gave me a chance. They gave me a job, an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to connect. And thinking back, without that moment, without coming on board then, the rest of my career, the last 10 years, may not have been the same. It may not have even happened at all. And I really find it, amazing that your life can sometimes come down to, as you say, Craig, just some of these moments in history. They could be a meeting, an experience, something that happens to us, or something that we proactively do. It's really fascinating to look back at that web of life, that career, and see how those moments have impacted who you are now. And sometimes it's only, until someone asks you, like you've done now, that you fail to realize that, and you should reflect on that more sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important to always look ahead, but sometimes just acknowledging what you've done.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can quote him exactly, but it was interesting when Steve Jobs gave that big speech. I think it was at Harvard or Stanford, one of these big universities, to thousands of youngsters who were graduating. And I remember at the end, he said, "Stay foolish." But he also said, you can only really understand life by joining up the dots, looking backwards. And it's kind of interesting, to look at where the path that we've trodden, it's a place of reference, isn't it? So it informs your present work, as you say, and the power to stay present, to learn from the past and take a vision, create a vision for the future. But so with that, I was just going to ask you one final question, which is an impossible question to answer.
Oh, goodness. I'm bracing myself.
It's not an impossible question to answer. But it's tough to, I suppose, clarify. Is if there's one thing, I guess, if you could say, I've never asked it in this way, but it's just popped into my head because you mentioned you young kids, is if there's one piece of advice, and you're only allowed one, if there's one piece of advice that you think is most important for us as we look at these massive challenges facing us and the beauty of our planet, what's the biggest piece of advice that you can give to your kids or anybody of the next generation?
Wow. Be interested in nature. Get them interested in life. I think if everyone around the world can do that with their children, the world will be a much happier, healthier, prosperous, cleaner, beautiful place. And we will leave this wonderful planet of ours, this only planet of ours, this only place in the universe that we know at the moment that can support life. We'll leave it in a better place in the future. Get
That's an awesome answer. That's an awesome answer. Yeah, you cracked it. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you in this way, Tom. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking to you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Craig, for this opportunity to chat as well.
Thank you.
It's been a really, really, really great.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, great to talk to you. Thank you.
Cheers.